trucks today are an icon of America, but behind those successful models lies an entire graveyard of bold ideas that were killed off. There were pickups that could transform, models powered by supercar engines, and projects so far ahead of their time that the market was never ready to accept them. And the most fascinating question is, if those vehicles had not been buried by cost, hesitation, and boardroom decisions, just how different would America's streets look today? In this video, we are going to explore the 10 rarest American pickup trucks in history, from futuristic concepts to high-performance monsters that left the whole world astonished. Number 1. 1966 Ford Ranger II. In the context of the 1960s, when America was living in the optimism of the space age, car companies were competing not only with power, but also with imagination. And Ford created a pickup truck that looked like it had come from the future. What made the Ranger II special was not only its unusual design, but its almost futuristic idea. This was a vehicle that could transform from a 2-seat pickup into a 4-seat vehicle thanks to a sliding cabin mechanism. Today, the idea of a multi-purpose vehicle may sound familiar, but in 1966, it was a huge leap beyond traditional pickup truck thinking. The Ranger II was no longer just a machine for hauling cargo, but a dream of an all-in-one vehicle, capable of changing according to the user's needs. The most impressive detail was the cabin section, which could slide about 18 inches, an extremely bold mechanical solution for its time. And for such a mechanism to work, they had to account for body rigidity, the ability to connect the structural sections, sealing, safety, and even stability while driving. By 1960s standards, it truly was a mechanical marvel. But like many other concepts ahead of their time, the Ranger II was caught between dream and reality. The smarter the mechanism, the higher the cost, the harder it was to produce, and the greater the durability risk. Meanwhile, traditional pickup buyers valued simplicity, durability, and practicality more than complex transforming mechanisms. The Ranger II may have made people stare in amazement at auto shows, but it was not practical enough to enter mass production. Number 2. 1967 Dodge Diora. This was not just a concept pickup truck, but a true work of rolling art, born in a time when custom car culture was exploding across Detroit. And precisely because it was too beautiful, too unconventional, the Diora was no longer really a truck in the traditional sense. What made the Diora most special was the way it broke nearly every familiar design rule of the American pickup truck. Its body was made extremely low, seamless, and so smooth that it looked more like a spaceship than a pickup. The roofline stretched long, and the bed blended into the overall form, creating the feeling that the entire vehicle had been carved from a single block. But to preserve those flowing lines, its creators had to accept an extreme solution: no entry through side doors. Instead, the Diora used one of the strangest features ever seen on a pickup truck. The front windshield flipped upwards so the driver could enter from the nose of the vehicle. This was the kind of idea that could only exist when beauty was placed above everything else. It was not practical, not convenient, and certainly not suitable for a vehicle aimed at mass production. But that very absurdity is exactly what made the Diora unforgettable. It was too different to become a commercial vehicle and too elaborate to suit the traditional truck buyer. Number 3. 1971 AMC/Jeep Cowboy. At the beginning of the 1970s, the market was starting to change. Small pickups from Japan like Toyota and Datsun were gradually proving that not everyone in America needed a truck that was large, heavy, and fuel-hungry. A new group of customers was emerging, people who wanted a vehicle that was more compact, more economical, and easier to use every day while still keeping the practicality of a pickup truck. AMC saw that trend, and they understood that if they moved in the right direction, this could become a booming segment in the future. The idea behind the Cowboy was actually very smart. Instead of developing an entirely new truck from scratch, AMC wanted to use the existing platform of the Hornet sedan to create a compact pickup that was practical and less expensive to develop. It was a decision that showed the company was trying to survive through flexibility, making use of everything it had on hand. Strategically, it made perfect sense. A pickup based on a passenger car platform would offer a driving feel that was more familiar to everyday buyers, while also opening the door to a kind of urban pickup before that concept truly took off. But the Cowboy's problem was not in its technical idea, but in its hesitation of identity. AMC did not know whether to market it as a Jeep, tied to an image of toughness, off-road ability, and strength, or as an AMC, carrying a more street-oriented, civilian, and practical spirit. That hesitation caused the project to lose the single most important anchor in marketing: what it was and who it was for. The more unusual a vehicle is, the more it needs a clear story to persuade buyers, but the Cowboy was trapped between two worlds and did not truly belong to either one. That is what makes the Cowboy's story so bitter. It did not fail because it was too crazy, nor did it die because it was too impractical. It died because of a lack of decisiveness at exactly the moment when the market was about to open up. Number 4. 1988 GMC Centaur. This was a pickup truck, but from the very first glance, the Centaur showed that it did not want to be a truck in the traditional way. It was lower, softer, more aerodynamic, and most importantly, it carried a layout that almost no one expected on an American pickup: a rear-engine design. That detail alone was enough to turn the Centaur into an outsider. In the minds of most Americans in the late 1980s, a pickup truck had to be boxy, tall, body on frame, front-engined, and it had to feel like a true working tool. But the Centaur went in the opposite direction. It was like a hybrid of a sedan, a sports coupe, and a pickup, a half this, half that creature, exactly like the name Centaur that it carried. The Centaur's design becomes especially interesting when viewed from a modern perspective. If you place it next to many of today's electric vehicles, you realize that its aerodynamic thinking was not outdated at all. The body was rounded and seamless, avoiding the flat surfaces and sharp edges traditionally associated with pickup trucks. That was the kind of thinking many modern automakers are now pursuing again, reducing drag, improving efficiency, and turning a practical vehicle into something that looks more friendly to the future. But that very quality was also what made the Centaur feel too unfamiliar for its own time. In 1988, most American pickup buyers were not looking for softness, and they did not want a truck that looked as if it had been sculpted in a wind tunnel. They wanted toughness that was obvious at a glance, and the feeling that the vehicle could tow, haul, go off-road, and endure hard work. That is why the GMC Centaur became a rare vehicle, not because it lacked creativity, but because it was creative in a way the market was not yet ready to accept. Number 5. 1989 Chevrolet XT2. This vehicle was built to serve as a pace car for IndyCar racing, which means its very existence was directly tied to speed, the racetrack, and pure showmanship. From a technical standpoint, the XT2 became even more attention-grabbing with its 360 horsepower V6 inspired directly by the world of Trans Am racing. For a truck in the late 1980s, that number was not just impressive, it was almost an outright display of power. This was a time when high-performance pickups were still a very unfamiliar concept to most people. Chevrolet clearly did not build the XT2 for the masses, but to prove that if they wanted to, they could absolutely turn a pickup truck into a machine with the spirit of true competition. But what made the XT2 impossible to confuse with any other vehicle was its design. Its most striking detail was the hood section integrated with a massive windshield, creating an extremely dramatic appearance, almost like a concept car straight out of a futuristic auto show. It made the front end look longer, lower, and more aggressive, while also emphasizing that the XT2 was not built to blend in. Every line on it served the feeling of speed and distinctiveness, as if Chevrolet wanted to push the image of a pickup truck to the furthest limit they could imagine. And precisely because it was so extreme, the XT2 had almost no chance of entering mass production. Number 6. 1997 Dodge Sidewinder. This was no longer a pickup trying to seem quick or sporty. The Sidewinder was the moment Dodge almost threw every normal limit out the window, then stuffed the heart of a performance monster straight into the body of a small truck. The result was a machine that looked like it had been built to challenge the entire American auto industry. What made the Sidewinder legendary was right under the hood, a Viper V10, something already terrifying enough when it sat inside an American muscle supercar. But Dodge did not stop there. They pushed its output to around 640 horsepower, turning the Sidewinder into one of the most savage pickup concepts ever created. And that is exactly why the Sidewinder impressed not only with its numbers, but also with the sheer absurdity of the way it existed. A compact pickup truck, yet capable of blasting from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just about 3.9 seconds, quicker than many Ferraris of the same era. That comparison alone was enough to show that Dodge wanted to send an arrogant message to the rest of the performance car world. Do not think supercars are the only place where insane speed exists, because even a pickup truck can become a nightmare in a straight line. Of course, a vehicle like the Sidewinder had almost no chance of entering mass production. Too powerful, too extreme, too expensive, and far too removed from the real-world needs of traditional pickup buyers. Number 7. 1996 Dodge Ram T-Rex. This vehicle was all about exaggeration taken to the extreme. Bigger, meaner, and crazier than almost anything rolling on American streets at the time. Just by looking at it, you immediately understand why the name T-Rex fit so perfectly. It did not appear to blend in. It appeared to devour every glance. The most shocking thing about the T-Rex was its 6-wheel configuration, an idea that today many people associate with modern 6x6 models like the Mercedes-Benz G63 6x6. But Dodge had touched this formula very early. In the context of the mid-1990s, when high-performance pickups and off-road style trucks were gradually becoming an important part of American car culture, the T-Rex was like an exaggerated version of all those dreams. It took the already aggressive Ram, then pushed it into something closer to a military vehicle, a desert machine, and a show concept than an ordinary production vehicle. One of its most valuable details was the computer-controlled self-leveling air suspension, an extremely ambitious technology for a truck of the 1990s. That showed Dodge did not just want to create a monster for display, but also wanted to prove that a giant pickup truck could still be controlled with modern technology. This was the kind of thinking far ahead of its time. Instead of relying only on size and mechanical power, the company also tried to bring electronics and automation into a machine traditionally associated with a rough, muscular, and simple image. So why did something as impressive as the T-Rex never make it into mass production? The answer lay in its very oversized nature. A 6-wheel truck with complex construction, advanced suspension technology, and enormous dimensions would bring extremely high production costs, heavy weight, limited practicality, and a market far too narrow. In other words, the T-Rex was as appealing as a dream, but very difficult to survive in the real world of pricing, maintenance, and user demand. Number 8. 1990 Ford F-150 Street and 1993 Ford Hydro. These two vehicles appeared at a time when the American pickup was beginning to move beyond its role as a purely work-focused tool and become part of a lifestyle. And that is exactly what made them special. They showed that a pickup was no longer just for work, but also for expressing personality. The F-150 Street clearly reflected the spirit of lowered truck culture that was spreading more and more widely among American car enthusiasts. Instead of emphasizing high ground clearance, off-road ability, or traditional roughness, this truck went in a lower, sleeker, and more distinctly street-oriented direction. This was the moment when pickups began to be seen as a vehicle for the driver to show off themselves, rather than simply something to haul cargo. If the F-150 Street was tied to urban culture, then the Ford Hydro leaned toward another world. Surf culture, sunshine, the beach, and the laid-back lifestyle of America's West Coast. The Hydro did not bring to mind construction sites or farms, but long beaches, surfboards, music, and freedom. It turned the pickup into part of leisure life, a machine for the weekend, for spontaneous trips, and for a way of living more than for a work-related need. This was a very important shift because it expanded the definition of what Americans needed from a truck. The greatest value of the F-150 Street and Hydro lay in the fact that they appeared at exactly the moment the market was changing. Pickup buyers were no longer just farmers, contractors, or workers who needed a durable tool. More and more customers wanted a pickup that reflected their own lifestyle. One for the city, one for the beach, one to attract attention, one to have fun with. In other words, the truck was beginning to be personalized culturally, and that became the foundation for the lifestyle truck wave that would explode later on. Number 9. 1994. Ford Power Stroke Concept. This was a concept with far greater significance because it was like an early declaration of the future of the entire heavy-duty truck world in America. What made this vehicle important was not a strange design or some overly unusual detail, but what it represented. The name Power Stroke would later become the foundation of Ford's modern diesel empire, closely tied to towing capability, heavy-duty work, and serving users who needed more than an ordinary pickup truck. Seen that way, this 1994 concept was not just a rare vehicle, but the moment when Ford began shaping its own future in the diesel segment. Its most notable technical detail was the ability to start at minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit in just about 2 seconds, a figure that carried real meaning when placed in the context of diesel vehicles at the time. With a diesel engine, Cold weather starting ability had always been a major challenge, especially for real-world users in harsh climates, where the truck could not afford to hesitate when work was waiting ahead. That is why it mattered in terms of readiness for work and in showing that Ford clearly understood what truly mattered to heavy-duty truck customers. That is exactly what made the Power Stroke concept different from many of the other concepts on this list. It did not represent madness, but seriousness. It did not ask, how strange can a pickup be? But, how strong, durable, and dependable can a pickup become? In a list full of bold dreams, this vehicle was like the embodiment of another kind of innovation. Innovation does not always have to be flashy. Sometimes it lies in solving exactly the right problem, one big enough to change the entire market. Number 10. 1991 Ford Skyranger. The Skyranger was special because it was something so rare it was almost unimaginable, a true convertible pickup truck, and it existed in only about 17 units. That number alone was enough to turn it into a treasure in the eyes of collectors. What made the Skyranger appealing was not just its rarity, but also its highly unusual origin story. This was not a mass-produced product launched by Ford on a large scale, but the result of a strange collaboration between Ford and Professional Auto Crafters, a company specializing in unique body conversions. That partnership created a truck with almost no precedent. It carried the practical spirit of the Ranger line, but wore the open-air freedom and distinctiveness of a convertible. In concept, the Skyranger was a clear embodiment of the period when pickup trucks were beginning to move away from a purely work-focused role and closer to the idea of a lifestyle vehicle. It was not created just to haul cargo, but also to deliver an experience. A convertible truck suggested a very different feeling, more open, more fun, and even somewhat more indulgent. But precisely because it was so special, the Skyranger became a dream that was difficult to sustain in the real world. Its extremely low production numbers meant that today it has almost vanished from the market. For collectors, the challenge is not only finding one that still exists, but also the parts, the preservation of those rare converted body details, and the cost of keeping a 1 of 17 vehicle alive. Looking back on this entire journey, those rare pickup trucks were not just failed projects or forgotten concepts, but proof that the American auto industry once dared to dream big and push the idea of the pickup farther than anyone imagined. Even though they never reached mass production, their DNA still lives on in modern trucks like the Raptor, the TRX, and today's bold electric pickups. So what about you? Between the Ford Ranger 2 and the Dodge Ram T-Rex, which one would you choose to bring back? Leave a comment below and do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos to come.